Unit 5 in plant and animal disease brings us back to an animal-related section here where we're going to cover genitourinary system diseases. And so primarily in this section, you'll find diseases related to the repro or urinary tract, and then we've thrown in a couple of other ones here that are semi-related to those systems as well. You all can read the objectives of the course here, or this section, and relate to that. I'm going to break this up into two parts again, make it a little bit easier listening. And so in part one lecture here, we're going to cover cystic ovarian disease, retained fetal membranes, and then leptospirosis, and we'll cover bovine, porcine, and equine lepto. So let's get to it. Cystic ovarian disease is a really common disease out there in the industry among female breeders. It really causes economic loss due to increased calving interval or increased foaling interval, and it occurs both in swine and cattle, and is actually the number one cause of infertility in sows. It's oftentimes associated with other periparturient stresses, and what that means is other stresses that occur through the farrowing calving process, such as retained fetal membranes, a retained milk fever, low body condition scores, other metabolic problems, things of that nature. So other stressors during that period of time can help exacerbate the onset of cystic ovarian disease. So when we look at these specifically, there's kind of two different types. They can either be follicular and luteal cysts, in which we have a failure of an ovulatory egg to ovulate. So those of you who have been through animal science, you know that we have developing follicles. I've got a slide here in a little bit that illustrates this a little bit. We have that developing follicle, kind of a blister on the edge of the ovary that contains the ovum that is ready to ovulate and it just doesn't. And so we have a normal hormonal cycle interruption. So you have sometimes an animal that comes into heat every little bit because we continue to get spikes of estrus. Cystic corpus after normal ovulation, that follicle remains fluid filled. They may conceive and carry pregnancy to term in that situation, but you still have kind of a persistent symptom there. Luteal cysts is where we have the corpus luteum that just never goes away for whatever reason. And so you have in that instance estrus, and I think kind of covering that here on this next slide, you can have the symptom of no estrus symptoms or no heat symptoms at all. They just never show any signs of estrus. Or you have nymphomania, which is frequent, irregular, or prolonged estrus. And in my experience, you'll see them come into heat maybe every 3 to 5 days, and you'll breed them in 3 to 5 days they're in heat again. That's a typical symptom of a follicular cyst. So these are detected with either rectal palpation or ultrasound can pick those types of things up. Some treatment observations here. Some of them just resolve spontaneously, especially those follicular cysts. Maybe finally they'll just go ahead and ovulate those and they'll be okay. GnRH hormone therapy is quite successful at about 80% success rate, via studies that are out there on the web. And then the old way that I would absolutely not encourage is manual removal, kind of just like you would do a blister that you would have somewhere, is just pinching or popping that thing during palpation. And that I would highly discourage because it can cause scar tissue, bleeding, blood clots on the ovary, and therefore reduce egg production. That would not be something that I would recommend. Although that is an old school way of helping remove those cysts. So here's that diagram I was talking about, a growing follicle on the ovary on the left, and then you see a normal process of ovulation in the top right hand corner, or an abnormal process where that follicular cyst just continues to grow and does not actually ovulate the egg that's inside of it. So that would probably be a nymphomania situation. Turning your attention next to genital urinary disease systems is retained fetal membrane. So after the foaling or farrowing or calving process, you get the failure of that placenta to be ejected out of the uterus. It remains attached to the uterine wall in there. And what you have, and if you've ever seen a placenta that's been dropped from the uterus after calving or farrowing or foaling, you'll see the little buttons on it. And those are called caruncles. Or cotyledons, and those attach to caruncles just almost exactly like you think about Velcro attachment. Those two things attach together inside the uterine wall, and that's where we get a lot of exchange of nutrients and blood flow and waste and so on and so forth. And that's a main piece of some of the different things that feed the placenta. And what happens whenever we get retained fetal membranes is those caruncles and cotyledons do not separate well. So in mares, a mare that's just foaled, that afterbirth should be discharged within 30 minutes. And retained fetal membranes in horses is quite rare. And if you have a horse that has a retained fetal membrane past 30 minutes, you've got a significant problem, and they are highly subjective to getting very, very sick. So that probably warrants a call to your veterinarian. In cows, most of them should clean within 12 hours or less, and anything after that is considered a retained fetal membrane or retained placenta problem. And so those types of situations, you may not get very concerned about it until after you get past 12 to 24 hours. Situations where we have twinning, retained fetal membranes have to be discharged from both uterine horns or that covered both fetus. So you have to make sure that both of those, those animals clean. This is quite a costly disease out there, because you can see the list full of associated problems with retained fetal membranes, from lower milk production to poor appetite. Oftentimes it's just a wick into the uterus for other reproductive tract problems. They oftentimes don't breed back right away, or in less efficient manner, can cause a displaced abomasum that we talked about in a prior unit here. So there's all kinds of things that can be associated effects of retained fetal membranes. Causes, again, a very long list. Dystocia, which is difficult calving. Twinning, oftentimes in cattle especially, results in an RP. Abortion oftentimes does it. Some metabolic deficiencies of vitamin E and selenium especially, and a nutrition program prior to parturition is so critical in having their body kind of primed for going through that stressful period. So be prepared. A number of those different things can cause this particular problem. Treatment options, again, one that is kind of an old school way of treating retained fetal membranes. You may have seen people out there do it, is simple manual removal. It's really not recommended because it can traumatize that uterine lining, and oftentimes then, of course, reduces subsequent fertility problems. So, induces subsequent fertility problems. So you want to make sure that if you decide to go in there and just gently tug on those retained fetal membranes and try and get them to dislodge, come loose, and then pull them out, understand the risk that you're taking of doing that. I've seen it done. I can't speak to how common it is today, but I think it's less common than it used to be at one time. The more accepted method is to for some hormone therapy like oxytocin that helps with kind of loosening that tissue or relaxing the tissue bonds, prostaglandins, which kind of normal hormone ejection. One of the things that I know works quite well, just from a hydration perspective, is right after that foaling or farrowing process or calving, is offer them 5 to 10 gallons of, not hot, but warm water right after they're finished calving, which oftentimes they'll drink. And that helps with the hydration, and oftentimes has a really good effect on getting them to clean. So if you do encounter a situation where you have an animal with retained fetal membranes, observe them for systematic illness. Again, that's a wick right into the body system. You can get all kinds of things, bacterial infections that are introduced because of that. And so antibiotic therapy is often warranted here. When you talk specific to the sow, you're probably going Oxytocin therapy, I mentioned the mare, you're going to be probably right on top of it in terms of taking care of them if it's not expelled within 30 minutes to an hour of birth. Again, preventative measures, proper nutrition. I kind of mentioned that with regard to protein and especially your mineral vitamin balance. That really crucial that you work with your nutritionist there. And then you use body condition scoring. Whenever you have animals that are much too thick going into the parturition process, you're at a high risk for retained field membranes. If you have animals that are much too low body condition score, you'll be at risk for retained field membranes just simply because of stress. So, preventative natures are critical here. Last one on the docket is the complex of leptospirosis, and we'll start with bovine type first. And it's characterized oftentimes by abortion. This is a pathogen that lives in the reproductive tract, and sometimes highly causes abortions and failure to secrete milk. And a high percentage show no symptoms at all. They'll have the lepto bug, but don't show any symptoms whatsoever. So maybe most problematic is they are a carrier, they're shedding it, causing potential issues in the rest of your herd. Clinical symptoms, it is a 7 to 10 day incubation time. So much like the flu, if you contracted the flu bug, it maybe doesn't affect you the minute that you get it. It has a incubation time in order for that bug to grow and proliferate enough to cause the onset of influenza. Same thing with lepto, about a 7 to 10 day incubation time. Cows will kind of be anorexic. They'll lose weight, pretty high fevers. The really unique one here to point out is coffee-colored urine, which would be obviously quite odd. So certainly one to watch out for as a symptom there for lepto. And the main type, I believe, is leptoharjo, and it's one that a lot of your vaccinations will target. So once that incubation time, if you have cows that are pregnant, you'll oftentimes see abortion, and it could be about 20 to 40% abortion without clinical symptoms. So you may not even see the coffee-colored urine, the yellowing of the milk, or the anorexia. You may just see just widespread abortions through your herd, which is obviously going to be alarming. Porcine lepto often stays subclinical except for the abortion event. This is known in the pig business as repeat breeder syndrome. So clinical symptoms there, again, another 7 day incubation. They may show, again, a fever for a couple days. Abortion in sows greater than 60 days pregnant, and all the way up to about 3 weeks prior to farrowing. So through that mid time frame there of their pregnancy status, they'll be at risk for abortion. Some mummified pigs and some piglets that are born alive but die just because they're already affected. Lastly is equine leptospirosis. Again, causes weak or aborted foals. Very similar symptomology as the prior two species that we've talked about. Bottom line, whenever we're talking about preventing lepto, is purchase tested animals if you can. Lots of your sales out there, especially your consignment sales, veterinarian has to test for some of these types of things to make sure that they are certified for move. So if you're worried about it, test for them. Purchase tested animals. It gives you some assurance that you don't have a problem that you're buying. If you have one, quarantine them. That's critical. Keep them separated from the herd if you can. Vaccination protocols twice a year. You'll find many of the vaccination options out there will be targeted. They'll have something in there targeted for lepto. And if you have an issue historically for lepto, speak with your veterinarian and come up with a game plan in order to make sure and target that particular pathogen. Treatment is really drastic. A blood transfusion that has to go on is obviously quite expensive, fairly risky, and is mixed results. Antibiotics, maybe for long-term, to eliminate long-term shedders, but more than likely you're going to cull them from the herd. So be proactive on lepto. It's not one that you will commonly find, but you should commonly be prepared for it. So that wraps up part 1 of Unit 5. Be sure to tune in for part 2.